atu kia tātou katoa, ko whakarau I ka mai nei, ko whakakotahi mai nei, ki te whakanui tēnei o ngā kaupapa, ara te tiaki tō tātou nei tai au, ko Kaimai Mamaku tērā. So, before we kick off, just a bit of housekeeping. My name's Tame Malcolm, first of all, and I'll be the facilitator and MC for the night. This is all relatively new to me, so please don't hold that against me as I try to figure out the technology side of things. A bit of Zoom housekeeping. You'll see that videos are off and your sound should be muted, avoiding distractions, and so we can concentrate on the individual presentations. If you have any questions from anything that you hear tonight, please email them through and contact Manaaki Kaimai Mamaku Trust. Lastly, the session is being recorded, so if you know people that aren't here tonight but would like to watch some of these presentations, then please contact the Trust and they can give you a copy of the recording. Engari, with that, hei tīmata o tātou nei pō, hiri nei te pai, ka whātu te rākau ki a koe mokoro, kei a koe te wā e te rangatira. Matua, ko mute koe.
Ai. Tēnā rawa koe. Mo tēnei honore nui kia tūwhera tō tātou whakarewatanga, nui mihi kauatua. Koe no ea ki te kōrero ko te amorangi ki mua, ko te hāpai o ki muri. Nārunga I tēnei me timata tātou I te Karakia. Nō reire ki no e tātou. E te manati I te tapu. Koe no tua whakarere, tēnei te whakaangātu o mā te whakaaro ki a koe. Ino hoki rā ko koe te atua. Kei te toi o ngā rangi, te wāhingaro, ko koe tunura. Hoi anō koe tino e te ngākau, kia tau mai tō hā, ki tēnei hōtaka, e whakaatata mai nei. Kia tau mai tō wairua, kia āwhina, kia tohu tohu, kia manaaki a mātau, e whakapuaki ana I ngā whakaaro, mō tēnei kaupapa whakahirihira, e kawe nei raru I te maru o Kaimai Mamaku. Nō reira tēnei tēnei atu nei e hoa e te atua. Kia manaaki tia katoa tia mātou I tēnei whakarewatanga. Hotira I ngā whakaaro, ngā kōrero ka pute tēnei ka tukuna atu kia koe. Hei aha, hei whakamana, hei whakapai. Nō reira manaaki tia katoa tia mātou. I runga anō, I tō mana, tō ihi, tō ehi. Āmene. Tūtaki nā ke te tautara ki motu kōkako. Whakataha ake ki te tihi o tū te mahurangi, ngā manu kawe riri ki tū o pauaru nui. Kia tāhuna ake te tapu o te riri e whai mai nei, ka mau te ro. Ko te atua noa tō tātou piringa, ka puta kawara. Ko ia, tō tātou mana, tō tātou ihi, tō tātou ihi. He pākai hau. He mana, he ihi, he tapu. Te tapu o ngā tapu, kororia ki tōna ingoa. Ka whakaonore tia te kingi Māori tu hei tia po te tau te whero te tua whitu. O tira te whare kāhui ariki. Taino atu ki te whare o te tumuaki te pau whakawahi kingi, rire hau, pai marire. He roi mata taku kai I te ao I te pō. O rātau tonu ko whakangiano I te tirohanga kanohi. Pewhia no e koro mo rātau atu I tēnei te aroha e puaki ana. Tēnei ngā kare a roto e puaki ana I tō whakangarotanga. Nō reira, e ngā whakaihu waka, e ngā tōtara haimata, e ngā ipo kahurangi, e ngā kuru paunamu, koutou ko ngaroa, atu nei I te ao tūroa. Haere atura. Takahi atu koutou I te ara whānui a tāna. Piki ake I te ara tia ki te pū motu o te rangi. Ki rangi nao ariki ki te toi o ngā rangi. Haere haere ki te rangimaariatanga o te mana te tapu. Haere moi mai rā, moi mai rā. Moi mai rā i runga ngā kōrero e ki ana. Moi mai rā i te urunga te takata moinga te whakarehia. Moi mai rā koutou whakangaro atu. He pō, he ao. Kōrihi ana ngā manu tākiri ko te ata. Ka pō, ka ao, ka awatea. Hoi no rā ko awatea te ngākau i tēnei whakarewatanga. O tēnei kaupapa. E kawe nei raru i te maru o te tarehi o Kaimai Mamaku. Tēnei te mihi kau atu, nei kia tātou. E hāpai nei tēnei kaupapa. Me ki ake he kaupapa whakahirahira. He kaupapa nui whakaharahara. Nō reira me whakakotahi tātou. A ki te kawe kia tutuki pai i ngō tātou ake wāwata. I ngō tātou moia mo tēnei tō tātou pai maungane. Ara Kaimai Mamaku. Nō reira e ngā mana e ngā reo. Hauraki, te aroa, tainui, tātou kato. Ko tahi te tā o te hoi o ngā waka me ki mo tēnei kaupapa. I nā hia i ana tātou kia whakatutuki pai. Nui te mahi ke mui tō tātou aroaro. Me ki ake hoki e ngā rangatira. Ngā rangatira kato. Āko. Mā te mahi tahi ka tutuki pai. Te rā no te rā kōrero. Mā whero mā pango ka rapa te whai. Ko ia tēnei e whakahauhau ani a tātou i roti tēnei kaupapa. Nō reira, he ngōku rangatira. Tēnei te mihi kau atu, tēnei te mihi kau atu, tēnei te mihi kau atu. Me whakakapi taku kōrero i roti tēnei o ngā Karakia. Rata wāre. Noho no koe ka tuatua ki a tāna. Koe e wheki, koe e whakā. Ere mai ko ngā kongakonga. Koe e piri, koe e mau. E tū tāne kia toro tika tō tū. Tihei Māori ora. Māori ora ki a koutou. Māori ora ki a tātou. Māori ora ki tō tātou pai maunga. I nā ko te rā te kaupapa. Te whakahoki ake i te Māori. Ki te ngahere. O tira ki te pai maunga, me ngōna auatanga katoa, tēnei ka mihi kau atu, tēnā koutou e ngōku rangatira, pai mārire.
Ka te ake nei rata mihi ki a koe te pāpā e te matua. Nau i whiri te whenua ki te rangi te whenua, nau i whakarite ngā taukaia ki wangi tēnā. Mei kore ake koe, te tātou te kawi e nei tikanga o rātou ma ki tēnei ao moho ake nei. Nei raka mihi ki a koe, tikana te kōrero e tū tāne kia tō tika tō tū, koe te Karakia o Rata, tēnei ka mihi ki a koe i whakahorahia, i era kupu tapito, i era kupu tapito reira, tēnā koe taku pāpā. Tēnā tātou katoa. So with that brilliant introduction, I would now like to introduce you to Norm Bruning, the other co-chair of the Trust. Norm is one of the co-chairs for Manaaki Kaimai Mamaku Trust, as well as being a councillor for the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. His work with the council has given him insight to the extraordinary work that volunteers do to enhance and restore the Kaimai Mamaku ngahere, especially through pest management and eradication. His aim is to reconnect iwi, hapu, and communities of the Bay of Plenty and Waikato to the Kaimai Mamaku forest, to recognise this taonga and enable these communities to manage the forest so the mauri is restored and contributes to a sustainable life force from the mountains to the sea. Tēnā koe, Norm, over to you.
Tēnā katoa. The Kaimai Mamaku forests and their catchments cover an area of more than 240,000 hectares between the Bay of Plenty and the Waikato regions, extending from the Waihao River in Waikato to the Tauranga Harbour in the Western Bay of Plenty, and from Mokaihaha in the south to the Karangahaki Gorge in the north. The area extends across 5 districts, is located near almost 500,000 people, and is within the rohe of numerous iwi and hapu. However, the Kaimai Mamaku is largely an uncelebrated taonga, and a taonga that is not thriving. Its Māori is struggling, and the forest and stream condition and function is degraded. In 2009, the Kaimai Catchment Forum, based on a land and water forum model, was convened to bring together all those concerned for the well-being of the Kaimai Mamaku. The forum included iwi, hapu, restoration groups, landowners, farmers, businesses, recreation groups, and government agencies, and was capably chaired by Rob or Pa McGowan, our current patron. The inaugural forum meeting was held in July 2010 to discuss technical reports commissioned by Te Papa Atawhai on the state of the Kaimai Mamaku ecosystems. The forum stakeholder members met regularly and coalesced into working groups to develop pathways for collaboration and action based on a cohesive strategy and operational plan. On the basis of the forum's work, a pest management discussion document was commissioned to agree a path forward in the context of a very diverse forest environment with variable pest pressures. A later document formalised this pest control approach into a management plan based on centres of actions that we now call hubs, around which forward work programs could be developed. In 2017, Norm Barker assumed the chair. The forum was later renamed the Manaaki Kaimai Mamaku Forum. Iwi and hapu formed the Māori caucus of the forum in 2017. And in 2019, the forum established the Manaaki Kaimai Mamaku Trust, often now referred to as MKMT. The forum's engagement mahi continued, and a joint agency committee, now known as JAC, of Te Papa Atawhai, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, the Waikato Regional Council, and the Manaaki Kaimai Mamaku Trustees was established. The JAC prepared a document towards thriving Kaimai Mamaku forests. A proposal to increase animal pest control between 2020 and 2025, essentially seeking to increase to double the funding for pest control in the Kaimai Mamaku ngahere. The parties signed up to an environmental program of operational activities, and the Bay of Plenty Regional Council committed $1.5 million over 5 years as a catalyst to funding to progress the mahi. On the basis of the forum's earlier work, an agreed pest control approach and the collaboration of the Māori caucus, now named Ngā Iwi Tōpū, and Te Papa Atawhai, a business case was developed to fund the work. Buoyed by the commitments made by JAC to integrate and increase pest control operations, the business case soon garnered high-level political support. When COVID arrived and the Jobs for Nature funding was announced, the Kaimai Mamaku Restoration Project detail was already well advanced, and the resulting funding proposal of $19 million was the largest amount announced, a significant iwi-led proposal for conservation-based employment. In 2020, the trust was restructured into a co-governance entity with 6 Māori and 5 community trustees, with Māori and community trustees as co-chairs. It registered as a charity and began monthly meetings to develop governance policy and initial strategy as a basis on which to take over the administration of the Kaimai Mamaku Restoration Project. The Trust received funding to commence its operations. In 2021, a transitional governance group of all trustees and Te Parawhai began meetings, working towards the Trust taking over the project's administration. A transitional project team of 3 staff were appointed. Strategically and operational plans and funding criteria were agreed, and iwi hapu-led projects began to be presented for approval. The project team established contract with specialist advisors, being health and safety, GIS, and pest control operations, to provide comprehensive support for the project proposals. Following a pōwhiri at Hangarau Marae, Manaaki Kaimai Mamaku Trust CEO Louise Saunders was welcomed into the kaupapa and mahi. The appointment of MKM's first employee marked an important milestone and in progressing towards a landscape scale project integration, collaboration and action. My thanks to one and all who have been on this journey over nearly 12 years. And my personal thanks also goes to Bev Gattenby, who as interim CE guided the Trust at a critical time. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Thank you for that historical context. As I was listening to that, one thing that was consistent in all of the changes and the developments was this idea of collaboration. And I think the Kaimai Mamaku Trust is quite lucky to have someone like you with the strategic oversight and someone that's been there and sort of keeping that collaboration going. And it's definitely going to be needed in the future as we move forward. So, I nai nei ka tahuria ki tātou kia pā McGowan, tētahi toki o tēnei ao tiaki tō tātou ngahere o tēnā ngā ririki a tāne. He really needs no introduction. In 2020, he was awarded the Queen's Service Medal for services to Māori and conservation. Rob's foundation knowledge of rongoa comes from Kaumātua on the Whanganui River, and he has a keen interest in helping Māori keep the Mātauranga that belongs to their land alive. Nō reira, tahuria kia koe e pā.
Tēnā koe Tame, tēnā koe Norm, te mea nui, te mea tuatahi e tautoko ana tō tātou wakari tēnga e tia iai nei, nō reire te rangatira tēnā koe huri no kia tātou katoa, ngā kaimai o ngā maunga tūrā, ka nui ngā mihi tēnā koe katoa. It's my privilege to be the patron, and I'm not quite sure what patrons do, except sometimes remind people, but mostly to encourage people. The Kaimai Mamaku is a very significant landscape, and all of us who live in the region depend on it for our well-being. And really what we know is that that landscape is not very well. The trouble has been over the years that it's been cared for in a piecemeal fashion, and Norman has already outlined all the different agencies and government groups and so on and so on and so on who all connect. And there wasn't much working together. And that combined with the fact that most people who live on either side of the Kaimai Mamaku don't know much about it and are not particularly interested. It affects our weather. It's somewhere we pass through when we go places, but for most people, that's about all it is. The idea of the forum was to bring together all those different parties so that we could combine our efforts and resources and talents to work together in a way that's never been achieved before. And that really is our big point of difference. 2 regional councils and DOC and all these many, many groups, 5 district councils working together. And that was really our big goal for those first many years in which the forum took to get going. It's a bit like an avocado tree. You plant the tree, you look after the tree, and it's quite some years before it has any fruit. Now we're beginning to see the fruit. So the forum stands for all of those different groups: DOC, EBOP, Environment, Waikato, the city and district councils, the different iwi, the various businesses, the farming, horticulture, forestry, education, all the many interest groups, community groups, huge number of people. The forum's role is to bring all those voices together to remind them of the vision that inspired the forum, and to keep reminding them the pathway to fulfilling that vision is to work collectively, to work together. The many differences between us can be the biggest obstacle we have to deal with as we move forward. But they can also be our greatest strength. They enable us to reach every single corner, every single person that makes up this whole big landscape, everybody in the Kaimai Mamaku whānau. By working together, we can achieve things that for most people appeared impossible. And that's what we're really trying to do. So the forum's role is to provide the leadership to make that possible. The forum doesn't have the authority to tell anybody what to do, but it does have the mandate to lead. Leaders are people who can see a long way ahead, can see that vision and make it real. Remember, a vision is a dream that has a pathway that makes it happen. And the forum's role is to care for that vision and to make it roll. Leaders recognize weaknesses. Leaders recognize weaknesses and strengths. Leaders actually steer us through those things, and that's the role of us, the forum. The aim of the forum is to restore the Māori of the Kaimai Mamaku. The Māori at the moment is weak because things are not going very well. You really have to know that area in actual fact to realize that. You know, I've had the privilege to be part of that landscape intensely for more than 30 years. And in that time, it's amazing how much change I've seen, and it's changed for the worse. Things that were common that have disappeared. That Māori is fading. The forum's role is to actually re-energize that Māori and make it happen. Māori is found in the connections that enable life to thrive. The role of the forum is to care for that Māori, to care for and foster the connection that will enable the Kaimai Mamaku to thrive, and with it all that live there, not just us people, but all the many species and landscapes that make up our community of life. Remember, biodiversity isn't just about things that botanists and people like that worry about. Biodiversity is about all the connections that give life, and our role is to make sure that those connections are reconnected, that they thrive, that they are strong, and that they can give life. And so to all of you that in actual fact have accepted roles within the forum, I mean, it is an honor and it is a burden. We expect a lot from you, but we know that we have tremendous resources in our people to back you up. So all I can say is kia kaha. I think my role really, as I say, is mostly to encourage and to keep us focused on that vision. And remember, forum, your role is to lead, not by bossing, but by inspiring, by seeing ahead, and actually being the torch which guides the way. Let our differences be our strengths, not our obstacles, and let our personal agendas actually always be second to the wellness that we all need to be well. And so forum members, my privilege, I wish we were meeting together because we would have had a big kai together, but hey, we can have a kai by ourselves. But the most important kai, you know, is the inspiration, the vision that we give to each other by being together. So thank you, forum members. Thank you, Louise, for taking on the role that you have, for Norm for giving us our history, all you members for accepting that role. Kia kaha, kia manawa nui, kia rata katoa.
Tēnā koe pā. And tikana te kōrero, ko te kai a te rangatira he kōrero. There's the Māori saying that we all sort of know, the food of chiefs or leaders is knowledge or wānanga or talking. And I think that's the good thing about this forum and this wānanga tonight. Although I would be keen on a good feed, but we can save that for next time. In the background, we're trying to upload the program for everyone so they can see the speakers that are coming up. We do have 4 more sessions. We've got the Jobs for Nature session coming up, then the Community Conservation Action, then some monitoring, and then we finish up. But right now, I'm supposed to give a talk on Mātauranga and conservation, and I did have a presentation sorted. However, based on Mokoro's start, I might change up my kōrero, and I'm hoping people in the background aren't panicking too much, saying you're going off script, that's not what we agreed to. But Mokoro started with a karakia, Rata ware. Rata ware, forgetful rata or ignorant rata, if you translated it. And it's a karakia that captures the story of one of our tupuna, Rata. He lived, I think, 37 generations ago in Hawaii, in the homeland of my tupuna. The story goes, he went into the ngahere to fell a tree to build a waka that he was going to use to avenge the death of his father. He felled the tree and decided he'll come back the next day to start carving. He went home, came back the next day, and the raka was standing again. He thought that was odd, so he tried again, repeated this process a few times, and every time he came back, the raka would be standing again. It wasn't until a few days later where he felled the tree and he hid in the bush to see what would happen, that he noticed all the birds and the insects come out of the forest and stand the tree back up again. And he jumped down and said, "Gotcha, what are you doing? I've been at this for a couple of days now. What the blingin', how are you doing?" And it was one of the birds said to him, "Ko mātou ngā tini o hakuturi," with the multitude of the forest, basically. And you didn't pay homage to Tane Mahuta, Te Atua o Te Ngahere, the god of the forest. And he said, "Oh yeah, my bad. What do I do?" And so the birds and the insects taught Rata the way to fell a tree, what we would call our Mātauranga. Now it's important to remember that because we'll get to it in a sec. So the Mātauranga, or the process they taught him, was that the tohunga goes into the forest, finds the tree that they want, and the tohunga starts tapping on the rako in a certain rhythm, certain pattern that followed frequencies and wavelengths, so on and so forth. While that's happening, it was tapping on the rako, and a karakia would start up as well. And a karakia that, again, followed certain rhyme and rhythm. And there's a few traditional ancient karakia, and many are taught today as well. And a lot of whai kōrero start with some of these karakia. And as this is going on, the workers stand there ready to go. And then the workers start taking, once that's completed, the workers take a couple of chips out of the tree, light a fire, and they cook a kumara. And all the workers partake in eating the kumara. So they become noa, and then they can start with the felling the tree. So that process was developed over 1,000 years ago in Hawaii. And you've got to remember, in Hawaii, they had limited resources or limited trees. They couldn't just go around cutting a tree willy-nilly. They had to be mindful of what they were going to do. So that process, or that kawa and tikanga, was passed on for generations and exists today. So some whānau within Te Aroa, when they go out and cut a tree down, they'll follow certain processes like that. What we found out in 2018 through research is that Mātauranga actually has a rhyme and reason as well. That when our tohunga taps on the tree, it scares away the invertebrates. And the rhyme and rhythm that I talked about mimics birds that feed on these insects and these invertebrates and some of the small vertebrates like lizards. And so it scares them away, basically scaring away all of the small critters. Then when they light the fire to cook the kumara, that scares away all the birds, all the big critters. And all of a sudden, by following our kawa and our tikanga, when we fell that tree, we're not having all of this negative impact on the ecosystem. We're not killing all of these birds and these insects for naught. We've basically told them or given them an opportunity to get away and still get the tree that we need to fell. So you can see why the birds and the insects taught Rata this process. It was in turn to keep their future generations safe. Now you're probably thinking, oh, that's a nice story, or that's some wise Mātauranga. It gets better. So we all know the theory or the science that says if you sing or play music to plants, they grow healthier. And some people have heard me talk about this before. Couple that with the fact that, I think it was 2018 or 17, they found that if they play the sounds of healthy coral reef to dying coral reef in the ocean, the coral grows back healthier. So if you play the sounds of healthy coral to dying coral, the coral will grow back healthier. So Te Tira Whakamataki and the Biological Heritage National Science Challenge came up with the idea is, what if we play the sounds of a healthy forest to a dying forest ecosystem? Will that promote health? Will that stimulate mycelium, soil bacteria health, tree pheromone, or whatever have you? And the idea being that, could we stimulate health by playing the sounds of healthy forest ecosystems? What most people are surprised to know is that when mapping the sounds of a healthy forest ecosystem, they are similar to the soundscapes or the wavelengths and frequencies of our traditional waiata and karakia, i.e. the songs and karakia that our tupuna composed 500 years ago. And it makes sense if you think about it. Those songs would have been composed in a time when our forest was at its healthiest. So our tupuna would be in the forest and sort of their home, and use inspiration from the environment to compose these waiata. It's not like now you can sort of jump on Spotify or whatever have you to get some inspiration. Our tupuna drew inspiration from the forest. As a result, we now have a timestamp of what a healthy forest sounds like based on what our tupuna did. So with that, I would like everyone to understand, or at least to be aware, that the importance of Mātauranga should never be overlooked. I see a lot of people write Mātauranga off as black magic or silliness or whatever have you. But starting with that one karakia that we were fortunate to hear at the start, that Mokoro shared with us at the start, basically, shared a story of a research program that is up and running now. And by all means, feel free to sign up to our newsletter at Te Tira Whakamataki or ttw.nz to learn more about it. And that's not a plug, by the way. That is, I want people to realize how valuable Mātauranga is. The other presentation I had was along similar lines of just sharing the importance of Mātauranga and what we can learn from it and how it's informing our current pest management efforts. Lastly, what most people are surprised to hear, I guess, is when I do speak of Mātauranga for pest management, especially in the predator-free space, people are often shocked that what I'm saying to them is basically ecology, biology, forest health and management. I'm just saying it in a different language. And that's essentially what Mātauranga is. It is one and the same as the stuff we're already saying. It's just been developed here in Aotearoa. So why would we not use something so bespoke to save our forests? With that, I will now introduce a video as a short interlude between our next session. This video is compiled by Department of Conservation, Te Papatuānuku, and we thought it apt to present here as their vision strongly complements that of the Trust vision. The Kaimai Mamaku thrives, hence we thrive. It's the same message we are seeking and the same outcomes, just a slightly different delivery model.
Ko mātou kē ngā kaitiaki, o tēnei re ana, e hāngai tonu atu ki e rā o ngā tikana, o mātou mātua tīpuna. Te āta whai, i tō tātou whenua. Te āta whai hoki, i tō tātou tai. Ngā awa Māori, tai noa rā ki roto i te moana nui ākira. We thrive when we care at the end of every footstep.
We thrive when we push ourselves, when we focus together. We thrive when we grow to plant for a vision. Te ora o Papatuānuku.
We thrive when we work smarter. We deliver, we innovate. When we pave a new path.
Te ora o te hapori. We deliver conservation in order to protect Papatuānuku. Nāna tātou I tiaki. E tika ana mā tātou ia e tiaki.
Because we live here, and because Papatuānuku lives here. Te ora o Papatuānuku, te ora o te hapori, te hunga atawhai.
Sweet. I don't know about everyone else, but that kind of makes me want to go put my boots on and get out there and do something, do some mahi. Anyway, on to the next session now. Jobs for Nature projects. So yeah, next we're going to hear from a couple of projects who are being supported financially by the Jobs for Nature Kaimai Mamaku Restoration Project. First up, we have tōku tuakana, tētahi o ngā toki o Te Arawa, Charles Te Kōwhai, who is Operations Manager for a project called Kaimai Kaponga, which is located in the Mokaihaha area near Rotorua. Charles identifies as Ngāti Kaue of Te Arawa Waka. His hapu connections are Ngāti Taiotu, Ngāti Hurunga, Te Rangi, Ngāti Ngārara Nui, and Tura Ngāti Te Ngākau. He has strong whakapaka connections to Ngāti Tamahika ki te Tai, Ngāti Hangarau, Ngāti Tumutumu a Rahiri, Ngāti Raukawa, Ngāti Koroki Kahukura, Ngāti Parauki Hauraki. Through his involvement in the Kaimai Mamaku Conservation Mahi, he hopes to discover new connections, stories, and relationships, and to work alongside like-minded people who are passionate about te wao tapu nui a tāne. Nō reira kei a koe te wā, Charles.
Tēnā koe, we. Tēnā koe te whanaunga. Tame, kia ora e wha, ka whai. It sounded like a pretty mean entry there, thank you. Well, I'll crack straight into it. I was given 8 minutes. I think I can do it in 4, so we'll see how we go. I'm going to start by just probably from a couple of years ago. So as a keen pig hunter, that's the way I was brought up with the old man. I was completely oblivious to the deteriorating state of our ngahere. My focus on hunting had blinded me to the mamae occurring right now in our taiao, ki uta, ki tai, inland to the sea. And on reflection, I believe many of us in the hunting fraternity need to get a bit honest about our relationship and motivations with regard to the well-being of the tuakana, our kaitiaki, the ngahere. So for me as a Māori, I look back and I think, man, I was disconnected, distracted, and probably a bit disinterested about anything to do with conservation mahi. And on a reflection again, I put this down to just, I don't know, a pervading mindset of, well, the kawana has the mana for that mahi, so why should I get involved? Thankfully, however, over the past few years, I've developed a keen interest in whakapapa, and I've been continuously blown away by our interconnectedness with the taiao and the ngahere. And this, I guess, gave me a bit more of a mature appreciation and interest in the ngahere. It wasn't too long ago, well, probably a couple of years ago, I'd gotten wind of a proposed 1080 drop up in the Mamaku area. It's a place that I've hunted quite a bit over the years. That was in 2020. And that set me on a collision course with my tura Ngāti Tangako relations out at Nungataha, who were led by Te Poari Newton. So I had my guns ready to blaze. And when I got to have a hui with my whanaunga out there, the first things that popped out, or at least that I remember, was these ones, Te Ao Māori, Mātauranga Māori. And as soon as I heard these terms in relation to the ngahere and the conservation restoration work being proposed by Te Poari and his team, I knew I had to get involved. Te Poari himself promoted the well-being of the ngahere as priority over other things like resolution of mana whenua issues and the like. And that really stuck with me. And we've even heard it in the intros at the beginning here about, I guess, prioritising the ngahere. So I had to ask myself, ka pēhea ai te mauri o te ngahere that's been mentioned. You know, how is the mauri of the ngahere? And in conclusion, I thought to myself, Te Poari, you're right. We as Māori, there's me. Palu was pretty ignorant. I've spent years in the bush trudging through it, but single focus, looking at the ground, what you're looking for, pig marks, pig side, and just forgetting about everything else around me. We as Māori need to get involved and act now. That's what I got. So anyway, another pātai, how do you generate commitment to a kaupapa Māori-led conservation project such as ours and others that are happening right now? So for me, it would have to take something pretty significant to tip me over that edge, seal the deal for commitment, I guess. And that's exactly what occurred at 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning in early October 2021. We went to a tino wāhi tapu o Te Arawa. There's a real deep place for Te Arawa, known as the Waioro Tuki. You'll know that Tame upon the Waititi. And there was some ancient and contemporary Karakia, and 3 specific mauri were imbued into a toka, or a rock, retrieved from the Waititi stream at the base of one of Ihinga's significant pā sites. So it was a pretty deep moment, I guess. This was conducted in accordance with ceremonial tikanga so that our kaupapa could start, and I'll put this in italics, to start the right way, to kick off the right way, kick our kaupapa off. And that happened on the very first Saturday of work, where we really officially made a start on our mahi with the Kaimai Kaponga restoration project. But that took us as a visual token, and it contains the essence of our kaupapa, and it's contained in that Mauri stone. It's a kaupapa that is tika and has been purposed to be shared with and to connect all uri that can trace lineage to, you know, some big names here. I'm going to drop some names: Ngāto Roeragi, Ihinga, Whakaue Kaipapa, you name it, they're in there. And really looking at trying to reconnect us back through our whakapapa, through all our stories, through our histories, all those things to the ngahere. And yeah, that was the morning that I experienced Te Ao Māori Mātauranga, pretty much for the first time, I would say. And for me, this is the Māori that energizes our project, energizes our mahi. So I've got a bit of a kōrero whakakapi. Māori and other ancient concepts are, I believe, things that can motivate and energize us. I'm just speaking as a Māori here, us, to get involved in conservation and restoration work. I also believe, though, that these same concepts, these mātauranga, can only be accessed and interpreted within a Te Ao Māori worldview. And this is why iwi-led projects are being encouraged by the Manaaki Kaimai Mamaku Trust and Te Papa Atawhai to progress forward in this fashion. And that's a bit of a journey in itself. So in the meantime, it's been said before, e tangi ana te wā oku, e mamai ana te ngahere here, e tātari ana te wā tapunui a tāne. So yeah, people have mentioned it before. You know, ngahere is not the flashes, but it's waiting for us to kick in and reconnect for us and yeah, do the mahi. So that's it. Mauri ora ki a tātou, mauri ora ki te ngahere.
Tēnā koe, Charles. Koia koe tētahi tauiro te humari e hoa. Charles is a living legend amongst hunting circles within Te Aroa, and to hear him say that you know, he's learning is very humbling, but also encouraging. And it goes to show that yeah, we never, I'm not going to say old, but we're never too experienced to keep learning. So I think yeah, there's another whakatauki. Me noho hei tauira kia tū hei tauira. Te Aore Te Pewhairangi said that you've got to sit as a student until you become an example, and I think you're a good example of that e hoa. Tēnā koe. So with that, we'll move to Jill Taylor. Jill is of Ngāti Tumutumu descent and is currently the General Manager of Ngāti Tumutumu Iwi Trust. And I see she's just joined us. Jill holds positions within and on behalf of the Iwi, is a director of the Trust's commercial entity, a trustee on the Hauraki Rail Trail, a member of Council's Mana Whenua Forum, as well as treaty negotiator for her iwi on the Hauraki Collective. Ngāti Tumutumu have lived under Te Aroha Maunga and the Southern Aroha Range since the, that's a big word I can't read, eponymous ancestor Te Ruinga a Raukawa contemporary, conquered the old tribes of Te Aroha in the 1600s. In Jill's role as GM for the iwi post-settlement governance entity, she is leading the huarahi for their people to have a presence and identity in their traditional tribal rohe. The Jobs for Nature project has been a key step for the iwi in enabling opportunities for their whānau to return home. Over to you, Jill.
Geez, that was long. Who wrote that? Okay, kia ora koutou. Max, are you sharing or am I sharing?
You're sharing, Jill.
Okay, go by. I'll just bring it up. Sorry, I've just been in another board meeting. So I'm juggling things here. Share screen. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay, ka pai. So I'll get straight into it because I know there's some time constraints and I've got some of my own. So as you said, we're Ngāti Tumutumu ki Te Aroha, live under the marumaru of, or the shadow of Te Aroha Maunga here on the western side of Te Aroha. So just briefly, I've put here, obviously been working with Kaimai Mamaku Trust, DOC, but we've also been working with other stakeholder groups in our community, Keep Te Aroha Beautiful, Weed Busters, Mataatua District Council, and again, Forest and Bird a bit more recently. So just, sorry, trying to move on. So obviously, you know, we are along with everyone wanting healthy forests, abundant bird life and clean streams, waters, etc. But for us, we also want our whānau to come home. So we are a very urbanized iwi. Probably 95% of our whānau live outside of Te Aroha. So our kaupapa is around having a thriving iwi within our rohe, but also having our people to connect with the whenua and their own identities, because that connection, because of urbanisation, that connection and our identity has been lost not only to the community but to ourselves also. So we started this project. We're lucky enough to have a DOC soldier, I call him, in Te Aroha, and he and others have in our community have been talking to us for a long time about the pest plant issues on our maunga. And so we know that it's almost like a hidden problem, because green's supposed to be good. But we know that the issue of pest plants is having a great effect on the modi of our whenua. What you can see here is probably some mapping of pest plants that was done over 5 years ago. And if you look here, this little circle here, that is actually the source of a pest plant called climbing asparagus. And that was a plant that was in this gentleman's garden that he thought was beautiful and wonderful. And what's good about this is that that has now been cleared, and you can see the spread around here of that pest plant, which is a really bad pest plant. Anyway, so phase 1 funding, sorry if I'm rushing, I'm trying to keep up with the time frames. Phase 1 funding really looked at the area of where these pest plants were, and we were able to send our kaimahi out there to track the pest plants. So we GPSed further, and we're able to get a really good idea of where these plants are now in the ngahere. We did some identification and training, and this was all through COVID. So the photo here on the side shows how we went into the bush and we collected some species of pest plants that we were looking at, and we used weed busters and other forums online to print off and teach ourselves what these pest plants were, how they, everything about them. Basically, we wanted to know our enemy. And then we, through our phase 1 funding, started some management planning. So once we knew where these things were, we were able to understand our enemy. We were able to work and look around not only the motu, but overseas. So for example, ivy, we knew that that was a species that came from England. So we investigated over there and looked at how they treat these species. And then the scoping of why these are so bad, and the harm that they are having on our community, which I will go into a little bit further down. But what this did, which was key for us, was it ignited an interest and opportunities for whānau to come home. So once we started talking about it, whānau started coming back to us and saying, hey, what is this? How can I get involved? How can I come home? Which really aligned with the Trust vision of bringing our people home and having a presence and an identity in our rohe. I've touched on COVID being a barrier that we overcame. We worked with it. We are outside, so we worked around those boundaries, but also housing is a problem. As we know, all over the country, it's a problem. What we've been able to do as the Iwi Trust is, through our treaty settlements, we have put aside a couple of whare so that we can support this project by putting our kaimahi in these whare. So from that, we got to that. So it shows a prolific spread of the pest plants. And the pest plants that we are looking at is wild ginger. Wild ginger grows in clumps and basically just takes over the whole whenua. Doesn't let anything grow through or around it. Climbing asparagus is a little bit like ivy, where it takes over its host, it spreads out, but what climbing asparagus does is it ring barks. So doesn't just take over its host, it kills its host while it's growing up and taking over the whole canopy. Wandering Willie, we're also looking at honeysuckle, Japanese honeysuckle. Through this process, what we came across coincidentally was that in November 2021, New Zealand Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment released this report on pest plant management. So it's something that we are still working on and trying to get Doc to to come to the party a bit more. But what was really interesting out of this is that New Zealand has 2,300 native vascular plants, but more than 25,000 exotic equivalents, right? So out of that 25,000, 1,800 of them have become naturalized. So they thrive, they can grow anywhere. In comparison, 37 birds and 31 land mammals are known to have become naturalized in New Zealand. And that's where our focus has been, right? It's been on rats, stoats, possums, etc. What we're trying to say is, hey, there's a bigger monster out there, and it's pest plants. And I think from talking to everyone, we're the only ones who are doing pest plants. And it's something that we're quite passionate about because it's going unnoticed. So as it says here, pest plants are wreaking havoc on our native ecosystems. So that's everything, you know, that's the bird life, and the greenery. So just moving on a little bit, sorry. This is our project area. So we're basically just focusing on Te Aroha to Waiorongomai. The orange area is really the intensive clearing area where we're having to go through and remove these plants because they will just take over the ngahere. As we work up the maunga, we're focusing on wilding pines. And in the wider area, we're just really doing spot control, and that's mainly along the tracks, because it's people who bring these species into it, birds as well, but what we're finding is that they're more prolific around the tracks. So we're just doing a bit of spot control and monitoring there. So just give you another shot of the area, but again, if you look at it in phases, you know, it looks big, but the way we've got our management planned around it, we think it's a big elephant, but the way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So that's what we're doing. So that's the intensive management area that we're looking at. It's just another viewpoint of it. And then what we've developed here is, this was part of our learnings, and this is a ivy patch. So we were able to get our kaimahi to walk around the ivy patch, and we can now pull out of our system where these patches are. We can go in on a plant specific focus because we're doing a bit of a plant specific and area management of these pest plants. So I just sort of popped that in there to show you sort of the data that phase 1 has allowed us to collect. One really interesting thing that came out of this was that we came across this maere tāwake, which is a swamp maere, and they became nationally critical in 2017. They're a myrtle from the myrtle family. This maere tree that we found was over 20 years old, and Te Aroha would have been covered in these. They haven't been known to be here. So that was a real tohu that we took from this, and it's, you know, kind of been, it was found because of the project. So that just shows it here, where it is. Yeah, and I think we just sort of wanted to end on our dream, and that this project is a start towards allowing our people to return home. So hopefully I got that within 6 minutes, and happy to take any questions or anything else, or yeah, clarifications.
Tēnā koe, Jill, thank you for that. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions.
That's right.
If anyone does have questions for you, I'm sure, I think we'll share the details on how they can get in touch with you. Engari, he tika ana te kōrero. Hoki atu ki tō maunga kia pūria koe e ngā haua tāpuni mātea. Yeah, what encouraging words to get back to your maunga, to get back to Te Aroha. I do always sympathise or empathise with people when it comes to pest plants. It's a lot harder to do than pest animals. Sort of animals, a lot of people getting it, you know, want to get involved, but plants are quite hard. And just when you said, I couldn't help but laughing when I saw some of those pest plant names. I feel like those are some of the nicknames of some of the guys that play for the Swamp Foxes, sort of Wild Ginger and Wandering Willie. Anyway, that's all it is that. Next session will be on community action. But before we do that, we have another video for you all. What a cool video. Big ups to whoever put that together. That was a good piece of art and inspiring as well. Right, in this section, we'd like to highlight some of the conservation action within the community, like I said. So first, I'd like to introduce Michelle Elborn, the CE of Bay Conservation Alliance in Tauranga. Michelle is passionate about all things conservation and all things community, and enjoys bringing the two together in the role BCA plays in supporting community-led conservation work across the Bay of Plenty. Over to you, Michelle. You're on mute, Michelle.
Apologies. Okay, just caught up with the communication. Have you got my presentation there?
Yep.
All good. Okay. Tēnā koutou katoa, ki ngā iwi I mihi ana ahau o Aotearoa, no pakia ka Celtic ahau, engare I nāianei ko moa o tōku maunga, ko taronga tōku moana, ki roto I tōku manawa mō aki tono atu, ko Elborn Wilson tōku whānau, ko Michelle tōku ingoa, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. On behalf of Bay Conservation Alliance, it's a real privilege to join the forum relaunch tonight, having been a part of its journey for a few years. So firstly, congratulations to the Trust, to Louise and the team. I have been invited to provide an overview of BCA and community conservation action in the Bay, and it's of course the community action part that's at the forefront of our minds daily. BCA's vision is that through collaboration, the ecosystems and Indigenous biodiversity of the Bay of Plenty are restored. And our purpose within that is to support and grow the capability and impact of our communities and partners to restore and preserve Indigenous biodiversity. So who are we as a collective? And here's the celebration right here with the logos in front of you. We're so lucky to have a passionate communities across the Bay of Plenty. We currently work with 23 member groups, most of which are volunteer-led, with our biggest recent growth in the Eastern Bay of Plenty. These groups deliver the real mahi on the ground, increasing species numbers, removing pests, both plants and animals, planting trees, restoring waterways, building at-place relationships. Some of these groups have been in existence for many years now, like Kaharoa Kōkako Trust and Otaniwanuki Kiwi Trust, while others are emerging and new. Many groups experience similar challenges and trends. For example, concerns around aging volunteers, administration loads, sustainability of funding, or meeting legislative requirements like health and safety. It was the desire to address some of these challenges and their successes more efficiently that led to the creation of BCA, Bay Conservation Alliance, to support, lighten the load and increase the profile of conservation effort across the Bay of Plenty. I'll just touch on some of our strategic objectives, which were reset in a strategy review last year and very much represent the need of our community conservation groups. So the first objective is about strengthening the support services available to the groups. An example of this, we have a fantastic operations team, Emma and Wayne, who work alongside our member groups and identify what support they need. That can vary from operational planning through to helping them with permitting processes, through to health and safety planning, to supporting them with the use of new technologies like the management of GIS platforms. And we also provide some support in the back-end administration area that can be quite overwhelming for volunteer-led groups. So how do you set up your finance systems? It might be using simple tools like Xero to make it more efficient. Or how do we ensure that the stories are communicated through setting up communication channels like a website or MailChimp databases? Our second objective is about helping grow the volunteer base. And as I said, a number of groups talk about ageing volunteers and the desire to increase the input of volunteers over time. But one thing we've certainly noticed, depending on the scale of groups, is that having some paid capability within a group can really enhance the capability of that group, and particularly also in the ability to enable and really sort of empower the volunteer action. Our third objective is around capability, and this really comes through things like training workshops. How can we share knowledge and information across the groups? Our cadet program, school nature education, ensuring that children are informed with knowledge to take forward, and using communication channels to share and inspire. We recently surveyed our member groups on what they needed support with the most, and I thought I would just share. It was quite interesting that the two top votes were for support around social media and communications and GIS data management. So quite interesting in that shift of how we use technology in the conservation space. Our fourth objective is around supporting and strengthening relationships. And for me, the success of anything that we do comes down to the relationships we build and should always be a core focus. BCA works with a wide range of partners from docking councils, iwi, other NGOs, schools and corporates. The fifth objective is around supporting landscape scale biodiversity. And landscape scale is where the big successes are. And Manaaki Kaimai Mamaku is a prime example of one of the most significant opportunities in the Bay of Plenty. And you will hear from Keep shortly, another incredible landscape scale opportunity. And BCA is supportive at looking at where we can add value to any of the landscape initiatives evolving across the Bay. And our final objective is around improving sustainability. And we all know that we can't fix environmental degradation overnight. I always loved Cam Speedy's predator control rubber band analogy, that once we apply some pressure and effort, we can't let that drop, or all the good work can be rapidly undone. One of the big challenges all our projects face is long-term viability and sustainability. Jobs for Nature, for example, has created some fantastic new opportunities, and our challenge now as a collective is to seek longer-term sustainability. This isn't just about funding, but relevance, meeting the right needs, building the right relationships, and empowering the right people so we can achieve the best that we can. I just wanted to flag our program Bay Conservation Cadets Tauera Mahi, which is a Jobs for Nature employment training and development program designed to grow the capability of passionate conservation-minded people looking for a career pathway into conservation. We run 3 12-week training programs a year, and applications are currently open until late March for our May intake. The program is highly experiential, hands-on, and much of their time is spent being trained and supporting work across our member groups or partner sites. Skills are developed across areas such as outcomes monitoring, water quality management, predator control, insights into GIS, conservation dog handling, setting yourself up as a contractor. In addition, cadets get a series of certificates in areas such as outdoor first aid, light utility vehicle, grow safe, etc. The delight in this program is watching cadets grow in confidence, and many now have gone on to find jobs they have been aspiring towards. If this program presents an opportunity for anyone in your networks, more information is available on our website. But equally, as your projects are developing and you're identifying training needs, if we can share our learnings and experience and contacts for you to utilize, we're very, very open to that. And finally, Louise asked me to reflect on what I hoped the future of the Manaaki Kaimai Mamaku Trust may be. And this whakatauki and lovely graphic sums it up for me. The Trust, Forum, supporting agencies, project delivery teams, community groups represent an immense amount of knowledge, skills and passion. So I'm super excited to see how we can all paddle together, be brave, to explore both tested and new approaches, and be open to weaving knowledge in our shared voyage to restore the Māori of such a significant place. Kia ora koutou, Mātauranga. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Michelle. And I remember when we met a few months ago, your passion for conservation was evident then, and amazing to see some of the experiences you've shared with us and some of those insights. And I agree a lot with some of those ones that what would sort of supercharge conservation within the communities. In terms of whakatauki as well, I'd add one more line, ki te hoi, grab your paddle, let's go, which is still that call to action. Right, with that, introduce Graeme from Kōkako Ecological Expansion Program. Unfortunately, I don't have much notes on you, so Graeme, I'll leave it to you to introduce yourself. Over to you, Ewa.
Oh, so I can tell whatever lies I like.
Yeah, go for it.
So if I can remember how to do this, we'll share the screen for the presentation. Tell me when it works. Got a lap?
I haven't shared anything yet.
Best laid plans. Interestingly, I couldn't actually
Cool.
How's that?
You've shared something. There we go.
There'll be a big white page with keep written on it.
Yep, we're away and running. Go for it.
We're away. Okay. So my name's Graeme Young. I've become part of the KEEP project because of my long-standing involvement with the Kaharoa Kōkako Trust. And I'll explain that as we go through this. So, as already mentioned by Michelle, the Kōkako Ecosystem Expansion Program has been as a part of BCA. It's been going for about 6 years. But the background Kaharoa Kōkako Trust to expand its area. So there's a picture there of the breakdown of the many areas that make up the Kaharoa Conservation Area. And in the top left-hand corner, you should be able to see it's just north of Lake Rotorua. And primarily it was set up to protect kōkako. So it was established in 1998, but the work done by community began in 1997. So we've been going 25 years. So we've got a long, long history. We manage everything. We manage everything, we measure everything. So we are doing pest control in animals, we are doing pest control in weeds. If you don't measure things, you will never know if you've improved. If you don't measure things, you will have no way of knowing how to improve. So when you start these projects, you measure everything and you record everything so you can look back at what's happened, how you've gone. Preferably, you will do a whole series of measurements when you start so you can look back in 10 years and see how well you've gone. So we started with about 400 hectares and we now have over 950 hectares. Every couple of years we add on a bit more to try and increase the area that we can manage the kōkako in. It's a relic population, which means it was there from the start. It hasn't been reintroduced. It's always existed there and it's now at capacity. However, the Kōkako Recovery Group, which is a national body that advises on kōkako protection, have determined that for this population, for any population of kōkako to be safe in terms of diversity, you need about 2,000 hectares because a pair of kōkako use about 8 hectares and the number you need to make a safe population is about 250. So we're short by about 1,000 hectares and that is where KEEP grew from. So, and before I go off talking about Kaharoa, and this hopefully this is an encouragement to you, we've increased in 25 years the kōkako population by about 6-fold. We still have peka, we still have king fern. And every year for the last 10 years, we've been involved in the Kaimai Mamaku 5-minute bird count that Forest and Bird manage. We've got nearly double the number of birds of anyone else in that whole area. We've got many more birds, many more species of birds than anybody else in that area. And we're not special. We've just been pest control for 25 years and looking after the ngahere for 25 years. Everyone can do this. And I have to say, it's about the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. My kids aren't here, so I can say that. They can't hear me say it. But the work that we do in Kaharoa has been amazing. So here it is. This grew initially about 6 years ago. It was initially called the Kaharoa Corridor Project. The intention being to expand outside the Kaharoa Conservation Area, capture land or capture forests that could be protected, so that the kōkako can spread, because they already are spreading. They go outside our natural area, but they won't be breeding successfully because the rats and possums and stoats will be taking out the eggs, the chicks, and even the female birds. So we need more area. So KEEP was developed, and it's grown and grown and grown. We have all these entities involved now. We have the iwi for the various areas of land. We have the Regional Council, Bay Regional Council, Department of Conservation, other trusts like Tame Malcolm Kiwi Trust. Kiwi 2 has been amazing because a lot of the areas we want to go to are privately owned, and a lot of them in our area Kiwi 2 National Trust covered. And we get advice from a range of people, and the biggest and nicest sort of outcome initially for us was the development of the Karakia Catchment Care Group, who are our nearest neighbours, who came to us and said, come and help us to protect all our forest in our areas. So this is a bunch of farmers who just took it upon themselves to improve their own catchment. Because they're on private land, they can work very, very quickly. And I have to mention Port Blakely is a private forestry company. They have on our boundary, they are our most biggest neighbour. They cover a lot of our boundaries. They have been an amazing support for kōkako. But getting on to KEEP, as Michelle said, this is a landscape size project. It encompasses a huge area. This is almost the whole of the Bay of Plenty is within our target zone. Now, on here, we're showing Kaharoa in the middle in the blue. Mātauranga mountain is up to the left of it, which is our nearest neighbour with kōkako. Their population has come from translocations from Kaharoa and Rohe. But our long-term goal is to link all the Bay of Plenty, well, almost all the Bay of Plenty kōkako populations, to have one huge gene pool. And we think this is probably a 50-year project. It's landscape scale. It involves everybody in that landscape. All the other, just been reminded, all the other advantages of doing this sort of work is that everything benefits. All the birds benefit. All the plants benefit. So everything wins. So this is our current goal. This is our current near goal. Tame Malcolm is our goal to be linked. In this particular map, we have the green is dockland, the blue is protected land, but it's indigenous, and the pink is this wonderful Kiwi 2 blocks that the farmers have put aside in perpetuity, also indigenous. So you can see between the big yellow blob for Kaharoa and the green blob at the top for Tame Malcolm, we have got a lot of routes that we can follow with maybe a bit of infilling, maybe in some cases no infilling, for kōkako to travel. Now they can't fly. Well, they can't fly with a dam. They can glide for a couple hundred meters if they're lucky. They can't really travel across ground level, although they used to be called fence hoppers because they'll hop along fences. But a lot of those areas will have to have some planting involved, and we're involved in that sort of stuff. In other areas where there's pine forest, they'll happily go through pine forest, can't live in it. So that's the complexity of what we're trying to do. Everybody in that area there will be heavily involved, whether it be forestry companies, private farmers, and all those entities I've already shown you. So the structure and role, we have a chair, and that's the only position. So Alfred Duval from Port Blakely is our chair. He basically does everything. He does the minutes, he runs the meetings, and he organises a lot of stuff outside the actual meetings we do have. We have no formal membership, but all those people are involved, and all those people have a say in what we do. We're not a formal registered entity, which causes problems because that means we have no money, unlike you people. Everything we do at the stage has to be done from people's donations of their time or by encouraging other people to do the work. So as we said, we're a member of BCA, but we have a big picture and long-term focus. We're not interested in going to Aotearoa and stopping. This is 50 years plus. This is forever, basically, more than my lifetime. So basically, we have an advisory and planning role. So we've got experts in a whole range of areas involved in restoration of forests, and management of bird life, and in management of replanting forests. So we can provide a whole range of advice to the people who are in our scope of movement or corridor, but we've got no funding, and we're working towards how we can alter the structure of KEEP so that we can actually start looking for funding, because we're talking, like you people, we're talking huge dollars, and we're talking about involving a whole range of people. So the good news is that the birds will follow that blue line, we can guarantee, I think, down a particularly deep and sized gorge, but which has got very good native bush on either side. And the big news is that I can almost guarantee they will head in the direction of that big red arrow into Mangarewa, and that is within your catchment area. That is within the target area that you people are working with. We're going to be supplying you with kōkako. You'd better be ready to look after them. And that's what I've got.
Thank you, Graeme. Again, really inspiring, and I admire those entities, those movements, and those people that have been involved in this stuff for so long, that it is, there's an expectation or this appetite that it's going to go beyond them. And when you say that kaharoa is not special, yeah, I'd disagree. I say you guys are very special for what you've done. And the name is appropriate, kaharoa, or Rota kaha, kaha being strong or courage or strength, and roa being long. Yeah, that you guys have been doing this for a while. So tēnei ka mihi ki a koe. Thank you, Graeme. Finally, in this section, we have Reuben Hayward of the New Zealand Deer Stalkers Association Bay of Plenty branch. He's been hunting since he was introduced to it at a young age of 17 in the, I think that's Royal New Zealand Air Force. Ever since, his passion has grown for hunting all kinds of species right across the country. He's hunted Northland, Southland, he's owned pig dogs, hunted wapiti, tahr, chamois, and red, fallow, sika, and sambar deer. He's been a member of NZDA for over a decade, and he's having served several years as Vice President of the Bay of Plenty branch. He was a member of the MKM Forum steering group when the trust was initially formed in 2021. He was elected as President of the Bay of Plenty branch and appointed to the NZDA Game Animal Management Subcommittee that supports NZDA National Board. He has a wife and 4 children who enjoy the outdoors, and he is going to hook me up with some cool hunting spots after this. So over to you, Reuben.
Kia ora, everyone. Can you see that and hear me?
Yep, can see that and can hear you.
Sweet as. Thanks for the introduction there. Kaimai Mamaku, I started hunting here probably 17 years ago. I've hunted right through the Kaimai Mamaku from South Mamaku to Otara in the east, Karangi in the north, Mokoiha, and up Mount Te Araha as well. Currently, I live near the centre of the range, 2 minutes from the forest, so I'm pretty happy about that. The Deer Stalkers, the National Association, was established in 1937, so it's 85 years old this year. The Bay of Plenty branch was established in 1950, so we just had our 70th a couple of years ago. We have a very broad membership across the organisation, large cross-section of society, lots of families and kids. Many members have a background in the Forest Service or Department of Conservation and actively promote sustainable hunting and conservation practices. Across the country, NZDA branches and members have supported lots of conservation projects and initiatives, some well-known ones, the Sika Foundation and the Whio Recovery Project, Fiord and Wapiti Foundation and Kia Conservation Trust. We've actively promoted the Forest and Bird of the Year competition. Locally, the Bay of Plenty branch has supported the Department of Conservation with pallet counts for population monitoring game animals. We've supported the Ongatiri Forest Project, protect the king fern by constructing an exclosure fence. We've promoted the predator-free Bay of Plenty trapping initiative to all our members. We supported and attempt to continue to support the Mātauranga Kiwi Trust by supplying rabbit bait carcasses to service their stoke trapping lines. Over the last couple of years, we've been supporting the Kaimai Ridgeway Trust to build and maintain huts for accommodating hunters. While the hut building isn't exactly a conservation thing, it's critical to managing game animals in the more remote areas of the Kaimai range. So it's important for hunting and managing animal numbers. We've promoted and arranged for avian avoidance training of all our members' dogs, so that's something we actively promote. Across other regions and currently being developed in our region, we've had farmers assist programs which help to kill pests and maintain lower animal numbers where farmers or forestry organisations are having difficulty with pest species. The NZDA branch are committed to supporting conservation projects with sustainable outcomes for both biodiversity and game animals. And to achieve a win-win for our native species and the valued introduced species, it's critical to have effective game animal management, and this is something that's becoming more and more a focus of hunting organisations, is to try and partner with conservation organisations to get game animals under control in areas where they're causing significant harm. And although hunters have, I guess, had a bit of a negative view in some respects in the past, people are becoming a lot more educated around the need to manage game animals effectively so that our environment and habitat are really healthy. As hunters for both meat animals and trophy animals, those animals require a quality food source, and an environment that isn't doing well won't support healthy animals, and an environment that's degrading over time will eventually result in declining herds and eventually declining populations of animals. So it's a win-win for hunters when the ngahere is doing really well. So it's something that we can work together on. Hunters have been advocating for quality research and monitoring of game animal populations and the impact on the environment, so that we have the data to support the science of population management. Together, hunters and other sectors can achieve outcomes that support both biodiversity goals and sustainable game animal herds. I was asked what we, as a local branch and as NZDA, would be interested in doing as far as supporting conservation here. And I guess the opportunities that I see for hunters is to support on the ground conservation, and that lies in the skill sets common among hunter-gatherer types, including backcountry navigation, animal tracking and surveillance, hunting, culling, practical physical tasks such as setting up or installing infrastructure such as huts, tracks and bait stations. So that's really where I see the biggest contribution, probably from us as an organisation locally, but we're all ears when it comes to opportunities. So if anyone does need help with stuff, just sing out, and there may be something that we can offer, particular skill sets or manpower for some things. So yeah, looking forward to what's happening in our local area. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Reuben. Awesome. I mean, I'm aware of what NZDA does and the role hunters play in conservation system, but good to have that message shared a lot, because you're right that some people aren't aware of what some of the awesome work that you guys do. So thank you for that. All right, another video. This next video is another doc video highlighting the plight of the Raukumara ngahere, which is also being supported by large Jobs for Nature project grant.
As a whole unit, the Raukumara makes its own weather, and it regulates the water flow out of the ranges and into the rivers that flow down to where we all live in the lowlands and the coastal. And so during heavy rain, 30% of the rainfall is intercepted by a canopy, a further 30% is dissipated down the trunks. What eventually hits the forest floor, mosses used to cover everything. I can remember walking and sinking up to your knees in moss, and that acted as a giant sponge, so it would soak up the remaining rainfall amount, and then, like a sponge does, it swells and holds the water, and then during dry periods the water would slow release. You didn't have the water just all pouring down at once and then just rushing off. Here we have an example of the moss covering everything. So over the tree roots, so you can't see them, up the trunks, over all the rocks and everything. And so sadly this is not a common scene anymore in our ngahere. The situation we have today is the deer have, with their sharp hooves, and especially on the steeper slopes, have cut through all that moss and the rain, and then with the possums eating the canopy, the rain goes straight through and onto the ground, and a lot of that moss has been washed away. So, the Raukumara has lost that ability to handle heavy rainfall events. Yeah, so, and to the detriment of us, where we live in the lowlands. I live at the mouth of the Waiapu. Our awa, it's got one of the highest sediment loads for a river with a catchment size that it has. It delivers something like 36 million tonnes of our whenua, heads out into the Pacific every year. That's like 7 truck trailer loads every minute. In the Raukumara, possums are in high numbers. With nothing on the forest floor for them to eat, they're starting to eat holes in the canopy, and which is exactly what we don't want. The canopy intercepts all the rainfall, washes down, washes all that topsoil and the humus and underlayer, the duff layer, washes away. You can't make land, and we're losing land as fast as we can. So with the deer and possum problem in the Raukumara, the sediment rates are increasing.
Cool video by Graeme. Graeme's one of my idols. Love the guy's mahi, and yeah, definitely inspiration for me in my journey in my career, and my mahi in protecting the ngahere. Right, on to the next section. And Graeme mentioned it before around monitoring, and I'll reiterate it. When we undertake conservation mahi, it's very important to make sure we conduct monitoring alongside this, so we can demonstrate the fruits of our labour or highlight where things aren't actually working as we hoped. This session is about some of the monitoring and data representation that is already going on in the Kaimai Mamaku region. First, we have Brad Angus to talk about the proposed Kiwi survey in the Kaimais. Brad is the Senior Biodiversity Ranger at Te Papatuānuku in Tauranga. He started with DOC in 2004, after 8 years in the commercial forest industry. His work over the past 18 years has mainly been in planning and delivering animal pest control projects, including protecting and monitoring kōkako populations in the wider Bay of Plenty region. He is involved in the large-scale goat control programs, aerial 1080 operations, plant pest control, pest fish survey and control operations, forest monitoring and species monitoring programs, including Hochstetter's frog, Kiwi and Kōkako. So despite his youthful looks, he's been around the block, it seems. Over to you, Brad. You're on mute, Brad.
Thank you, Thomas, and kia ora tātou to everybody. I'll share my screen. Yeah, so yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Ko Brad Angus Tugunga, ko Te Arua toko waka, ko Ngāti Whakaui toko iwi, no Rautarua ahau. As Thomas mentioned, yeah, I've worked for Te Papatuānuku since 2004, and so yep, still looking pretty useful. Thank you, Thomas. And my kōrero tonight is around Kiwi. So I've only got 5 minutes. I'll probably get it done within that. I think there's only 5 slides. So just as a broad brush indication of population of Kiwi, there was sort of a wide distribution of Kiwi through the Kaimai Mamaku forests right up to the 1980s. The early sort of survey work done by the Wildlife Service and Forest and Bird through the 60s, 70s showed good distribution of Kiwi, but obviously population declining like everywhere else across the country. So population in steady decline over many decades. And this was observed particularly in Ōtānuanuku, where right up until sort of the late 90s, there was still a number of birds in Ōtānuanuku, and then suddenly there wasn't. And the last decent sort of survey happened in 1996, so a while ago, and there was 24 birds heard over 58 sites. It's quite a big effort. Dave Wills did that piece of work with help from others. He's now a senior ranger down in Mirapara, still working for Te Papatuānuku. But Dave did that work back in 1996. The map there's pretty hard to see, but he covered pretty much the park. It doesn't actually show the Mamaku, but he did do some sites down on the Mamaku, northern Mamaku. And the red, excuse me, the red circles there are where Kiwi were detected through listening surveys at night in 1996. So still in 1996, there was still a few birds around, even though obviously a lot less birds than there were previously. So a population in real trouble. But this distribution was still sort of, there was reasonable distribution of Kiwi. And just some background information, just nationally, it was estimated there was 12 million Kiwi once. Now we're down to about 68,000. And as some of the statistics around the decline of Kiwi, you know, unmanaged Kiwi populations with no stoat control are declining at sort of 2% every year. So in the presence of ferrets and stoats. So it takes a genius to work out populations decline without management. Excuse me. And yeah, the main threats to Kiwi are predators, particularly ferrets, stoats, cats, lost habitat, historically a very important part of it, and populations getting more and more fragmented. So this year, 2022, we're quite keen to just repeat what we did back in 1996, essentially, and just using a very basic technique that's been around for a long time. Essentially, just people walking to prominent high points in the ngahere and listening for 2 hours after dark, and just recording what they hear on this standard reporting card. And the optimal listening time is between April and June. And what we're proposing is we do some listening around May. So that's pretty much what we're looking to do. Just a little bit of context. The last decent survey was 1996, but we have been doing a little bit of, well, actually quite a bit of work up in the northern Mamaku, Opoiaki. Over the years, we put quite a lot of Kiwi recorders out there in 2016, I think, and we've picked up Kiwi. And so myself, working very closely with Ngāti Hangaro and Ngā Manawa, we've picked up Kiwi still, you know, in low numbers, but throughout that northern Mamaku area. So we're keen to do a little bit more work on that northern Mamaku, but also include the Kaimai as well, and utilise the hut and track network and involve everybody. This is just a map of some of the sites that we've detected Kiwi in recent years. The blue dots being where we've had recorders and picked up Kiwi. As I say, that's work we've done with Ngā Manawa over the last few years. Why do we want to do this information? Really, it's going to be useful information to sort of guide what we do next. There's not going to be many birds left. We're talking about a very remnant population, but it's a good illustration of, unfortunately, another species that's going extinct in our wahiri on our watch. But there is still an opportunity, potentially, that we could safeguard the genetics of these birds. And depending on how many are still out there, we might be able to even do something in situ. But if we get some information, we can cross that bridge. So, yeah, just expect some information about the how, who, and what in March, ready to do the survey in May. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Brad. I imagine there'll be no shortage of people knocking on your door, wanting to be involved or help out with that monitoring. And I'm not sure what the situation is, whether you allowed people to come help you, but yeah, there'll be no shortage of people wanting to help you. Tying in your kōrero with Reuben's kōrero, I'd encourage anyone listening to this and those listening to encourage their friends and whānau, get your dogs Kiwi averted, whether they're hunting dogs or town dogs, whatever. You just never know, especially if we do have a goal of trying to bring Kiwi back everywhere. Kiwi dogs should be Kiwi averted everywhere. Right, fine. Next we have Bex Newland. Bex is also a senior biodiversity ranger from Te Papatuānuku based in Rotorua. Bex studied zoology at university and also has a Masters of Conservation in Biology. She's worked for DOC in various roles on and off since 2007. Bex is going to talk about the various monitoring techniques available for our teams to use. I will say as well, Bex is one of those people that when she does talk, everyone listens because she's full of insight and knowledge. So over to you, Bex.
Oh, wow. Thanks for the introduction. No pressure.
The pressure's on you now.
All right, let me just share the screen. Hopefully you can see that. Yep, cool. Okay, so yeah, kia ora everyone. I am here we've been asked to talk about environmental monitoring and why it matters. And as we've heard already being alluded to tonight, it does matter. Environmental monitoring is really important. So it helps us tell a story about what's happening with our projects. It helps us understand what we've got at a project site. It's an essential tool in determining whether all the efforts we've put in are achieving measurable change, positive or otherwise. It's also useful for helping us with a learn as we go process. So positive change it's not just dead rats, dead possums, dead stoats, or loads of weeds have been removed from a site. Monitoring helps us answer questions like, has the removal of these predators or weeds been enough to increase biodiversity? Is the bird life now thriving? What happens when the seasons change and how fast are pests reinvading? Environmental monitoring helps tell us what's working and what effect we've had, and perhaps whether we need to do more or whether we need to make changes to what we're doing. So why should we monitor? Technically, monitoring involves a systematic gathering and analysis of information to help you understand what's happening with your conservation project. It's an integral part of a project's management because it provides essential information. So this information will form an inventory of what's present and at what levels it's present at your site. So native species or pests, for example. It helps us understand and compare the health of different sites in your site. And it also helps us understand how well our control or protection measures are working. And it tracks progress towards goals, objectives, and targets. It can be used to celebrate successes and build a sense of achievement within groups. And it can be provide really useful information for funding applications. And sometimes applications actually require this information. So what should I monitor? How do you know what to monitor? Well, what you need to monitor depends on the questions that you want to answer. It's really important to, I haven't changed this, there we go. It's really important to have clearly defined goals, objectives, targets, or questions. So there's some questions that you could ask to help decide on what monitoring objectives you should have. Why are we doing this? Do we just want to know what's here? Do we want to see change? Are there taonga species that we want to see protected? What information will help us make informed decisions? What will help us know that our project or our group is on track? What's the appropriate scale for our monitoring? Do we want to know just about a small control area, a catchment, a district within a reserve boundary perhaps, or maybe a whole forest or ecosystem? What timeframes are we looking at for monitoring? Is it over days, months, or maybe even years? And do we need input from other agencies or other groups that can help us? So there's 9 basic principles around monitoring that we should consider. We need to have clearly defined goals. We need to build our program on what's happened in the past and what we know already. But also we don't want to be preoccupied by current perceptions of what we think might be happening or what might be there. We need to ensure comparability, and we need to utilise repeat measures. The monitoring program needs to be carefully established and collect interpretive data. And it's important to ensure the long-term commitment to the program and to commit to really good data management. So if we think about monitoring, we can sum it up in 3 basic types of monitoring. So firstly, we've got inventory monitoring, and this describes what's there. It gives us a stock take of what's there at a given point in time. Then we have results monitoring, which helps us understand the results of our actions. And we have outcome monitoring, which monitors the benefits of management actions to a wider habitat, community, or ecosystem. So often people get a little bit confused between results monitoring and outcome monitoring. But an example that we can use to explain the difference between these would be thinking about carrying out rat control for kōkako protection, let's say. The results monitoring would be a measure of the success of your rat control. So if you had bait stations out and you did some tracking tunnel monitoring before the control operation and after control operation, that will give you the results of your control operation. The outcome monitoring would measure the changes in the kōkako population over time. So this might be full kōkako census, juvenile surveys, or walkthrough surveys. So anyone can monitor. It's not always a scary technical tool that needs specialist people to complete it. Local community members, iwi, whānau, hapu, and even our children have an important role to play in the sustainable use of natural resources. Often these are the people who are the most connected with the whenua, as they're the ones who are out there doing it. Observation is a powerful tool for monitoring, and we shouldn't forget this. And it's those people who are out in the ngahere the most often that will see the most change. It's similar to keeping a diary about your veggie garden. Dedicated gardener can tell you when the best time is to grow what different vegetables. They know what effects temperatures and rainfalls will have. This is a type of monitoring. So when you're out in the ngahere, take notice of what's happening around you. What plants are flowering? What can you see on the ground? Are there seeds around? Do you see birds feeding? What are they eating? Do you notice possum droppings? What about scratching on trees? Keep notes of what you see, including the date and time. That's really important. And also, if you can, it's really nice to have photos to look back onto. There's so many benefits of having everyone engaged in monitoring. More data can be collected and the capacity and capability of groups is enhanced. And what's also really important is that the overall well-being can be improved because people become more connected to the whenua and they feel empowered that the knowledge that they're collecting is helping to make positive changes. So when you're setting up your monitoring, have a think about what you can do yourselves. What can you monitor? What do you want to know how to monitor? Maybe you can get some training or some people can come in and teach you about that. Or consider if you've got some more complicated questions and maybe you need other people to help with that. So it's important to know that our monitoring is going to be effective. Effective monitoring ensures that each action that we're taking is effective and the effort's not being wasted on ineffective actions. So we can, when we think about whether monitoring is being effective, we should consider these things. That this techniques that we're using are scientifically valid, although this can depend on the questions that you're asking. The aspects relevant to your project are measured, that it's carried out regularly and consistency, accurate records are kept, and that it's repeated. And when the information that you have gathered is used as part of an evaluation of your project goals or actions. So I just thought I'd finish by talking quickly about a few online resources that are available if people are interested in them. These are all available on the DOC website. So there's a really good biodiversity inventory and monitoring toolbox, and that provides a whole lot of information about animal pests, bats, birds, freshwater ecology, freshwater fish, invertebrates, marine environments, and also vegetation monitoring. So we can send out links later if anybody is interested in that. There's also some really good field-based training courses that are available. And there's links to all of these, information about them on the DOC website, and they're either face-to-face or online courses suitable for a whole range of different people. So they're delivered and administered by Nelson Marlborough Institute of Technology and run in partnership with DOC. So they have courses on 20 by 20 plot reconnaissance, animal pest methods, conservation first aid, 5-minute bird counts, follow browse index, plant identification, weed management, and predator trapping techniques. And sometimes some of the local DOC offices try and organise and run those in local areas and put those out for community groups to be involved in. There's also a few free online courses on the DOC website. And then there's a really good document that is a guideline to monitoring populations, which has some really good information on some of the stuff I've talked about in a bit more detail. And the Predator Free Trust New Zealand has a really good online toolkit around monitoring tools. So to finish, I thought I would just leave you with this. If we all monitor biodiversity in the same way and gather the data in one place, we can evaluate it and use it to help improve the way we manage biodiversity across the whole country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bex. And I don't think we can overstate it enough, how important monitoring is. A lot of pest control initiatives just want to get straight into knocking off the pests, but monitoring is such a huge part of it that we need to make sure that we're all doing it as best as possible. And that is actually a really good segue to our next speaker. We have Scott Samwell from Ethos Environmental giving us a quick look at the system he's developed to represent the captured data spatially. Scott is first and foremost a field worker in the conservation industry. Along with his full certified rodent detection dog, Millie, he has worked on hundreds of pest-free islands and sanctuaries, ensuring that our threatened taonga have a safe environment to survive. Over the years, he became frustrated with the slow uptake of technology in the conservation industry. I hear that. And his company gradually evolved from providing on-the-ground expertise to providing in-the-cloud spatial data services. So over to you, Scott.
Kia ora, Tame. I just wanted Bex to leave that last slide up because that just sums up absolutely everything. So I don't think actually I have to say any more than that, but it's actually great. It goes into this. So I was trying to convince everybody that this is what we need to do, that we need to put everything together and we need to monitor things the same way so that we know if we're having a positive outcome, just like Graeme was saying as well. So everyone's already said everything that I wanted to say. So this is going to go like 2 minutes. All I'm going to talk about is how we do these things now in the cloud using this technology. So as Tame said, I am a frustrated field worker and we just didn't have the tools that we needed to do these things. And so I asked around and the tools exist. And so we now leverage those, not steal, leverage for the conservation industry. So we, years ago, here at Ethos Environmental, got hold of a company called Esri, who are the biggest geos company on the planet, who make a product called ArcGeos Online. This is a GIS, which stands for Geospatial Information System, in case anyone was wondering. This is online maps, basically. We said, look, you've got this fantastic software. We're in the conservation industry. We have absolutely no money, but we do a really, really good job. And we're going to save all the animals and trees and insects and that sort of stuff. Can you give us all this software for free? And they said yes. So, well, not quite free, but what we do is we give them a bit of a cohort anyway. So we managed to put together some systems for the conservation industry, and this is what we've been doing for the last 10 years or so, and just doing it with basically the greatest geo software on the planet, but not paying a hell of a lot of money for it because, well, we don't actually make a lot of money in this industry. You don't actually get to sell the endangered species after you've saved them. And so we managed to go through the Esri conservation program that I have to give a plug for now and get a portal for the trust, basically for the Kaimai Mamaku Trust. And this is what I'm going to show you a little bit of today. Now, the good thing about this is that we can already use systems that we've already created. So what I'm showing you just here is a system for the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and this is what they call the care groups system, and it's all those managing groups that we all know, that we've heard from tonight, and we'd already started putting those guys together. Now with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council and the Bay Conservation Alliance, you heard from Michelle earlier, so I didn't tell you about that either, so this is great. There's all these groups basically around the place that have already been doing a lot of mahi. And if we were to zoom into one here, for example, and see the Angteri Forest Project, I was actually doing this while Graeme was talking and going, I wonder what Graeme's got out there at the moment. I was like, oh my gosh. So anyway, what everyone's been doing is we're putting all their traps and bait stations and all of their data into the Bay of Plenty Regional Council Bay Conservation Alliance care group system. And now we're able to put more groups in, the groups, of course, that are in the Kaimai Ranges. And so this is what Lucas has been doing actually just the last couple of days. And now we can see more and more groups coming into here. Now, this uses this, as I was saying, this ArcGIS online system. Basically, it's just a toolbox for us to make whatever tools we want. And we're configuring this for the conservation industry. Luckily, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council also decided to make a thing called GeoPest. Well, they contracted us to make a thing called GeoPest, which is basically looking for weed species. So we started off just, trapping and monitoring and that type of stuff. And now we've actually got a full-on system for going out there and finding where every weed is in the Bay of Plenty. Of course, not to be outdone, the Waikato Regional Council contacted us and said, oh, we should have one of those as well. And so we basically built the same system again for the Waikato Council. Now, this worked out really, really well because you've got Bay of Plenty on one side of your ridge, and then you got Waikato on the other. And so we've already got those two councils mapped. So when Lucas approached me and said, hey, do you want to put something together for the Kaimai? I was like, I think we've already done it, actually. So what we did, though, is we grabbed the, okay, so this is a lot more than just what Bay of Plenty and Waikato were putting in the system. But what we can do is we can collaborate. And this is what that thing that Bex put up at the end was fantastic. We can collaborate and we can just use data that's already there. It all can go in the same system and talk to each other. And the great thing about this is it also can be completely secure. Now, I can see, this is live data we're looking at the moment. So if Lucas does draw another one in right now, you'll see it pop up. But these are the Bay of Plenty Regional Council and the Bay Conservation Alliance groups just here. And you can see they're growing, they're getting more and more like this. Any data that people put in here, like the Bay of Plenty Regional Council putting eDNA data in here as well, which we can say, oh, can we have a look at that as well inside the Kaimai Mamaku system? Yep, we can do that, but we can do it securely. So it doesn't mean that just because I can see it, he can see it, he can see it, that type of stuff. Only people who we've given permission to see these things can see it. But we can also make these things quite public. If we wanted to, I mean, say, look at this great mahi we're doing. And so we can put things on a website, for example, which I just discovered was done at about 6 o'clock this afternoon. One of our dashboards suddenly appeared on the MKMT website, which is very cool. Anyway, so now what we're looking at is some of the management areas that Lucas has been drawing in, and he's been pretty busy. So this is really exciting. Every time I turn on this portal again and have a look in there, I can see things that people are creating in here and the work they've been doing. And it's all in basically in one place. So what we did is we put together this portal. I might just jump out into the portal here straight away, actually, just to make it faster. So this is actually going straight into the MKMT portal, which is on ArcGIS Online. This is very secure just here. And so this is where Lucas would go in, for example, and start drawing in where he wants the new areas to go and things like that. And he can do full-on edits that generally people out in the field can't do because we don't want to give people full access to these things. However, what we do want people to be able to see is things like this public interface, which is the one that suddenly appeared on the website this afternoon. So if you wanted to keep up to date with what's going on out there, how many management areas, how many of those are care groups, what all those groups are doing, and all their statistics and that type of stuff, we can be putting these on an embedded a dashboard that's embedded into a website, which is what's happening right now, which is very exciting. So we can put all sorts of stats in that. So you can just keep on visiting that website. And if you're on the ground, like Graeme, for example, you've got your device in your hand and you're out there collecting the data in the field. And as that's happening, the tallies are happening in real time on these dashboards. So as I said, I'm going to try and keep this pretty quick, hopefully not to 5 minutes just yet. But I just want to say what we're doing next is we're putting this, this system into the hands of the new groups that are joining up now in the Kaimai Ranges. And so, yeah, you've got the care groups and the Bay of Plenty groups, the Bay Conservation Alliance groups. And now we've got these new groups joining, which is absolutely fantastic. And what they're going to be able to do in the systems now that we've developed is not only monitoring they're not only recording what they've caught in their traps and what they've taken in their bait stations, but also what weeds they've pulled out, what native plants they've put in the ground, and some very basic health and safety stuff as well. We can put all this in the same system. Think of it as a one-stop shop, and then we can sit back and watch it all happening in near real time on these dashboards as they're going along. So if that, and that was a very, very quick, and I didn't want to take it too long because I know I'm going last and we are going over time and we still have to hear from a couple of other people. But if you do want to hear more about this, that's my email address just there. Feel free to ask me any questions. I'd be happy to answer them, and I look forward to seeing you on my dashboards.
Thank you, Scott. A man after my own heart with that information. I remember back, it's been mid-2000s, looking at my e-tricks and having to upload, one of my first jobs for Doc, having to upload data manually onto a spreadsheet that no one probably knows where it is now. How far we've come, and so all I can want to do is encourage people to use. Data is so powerful,
awesome.
And it helps create a big story for us as well. So
absolutely.
Thank you. And that brings us to our final speaker of the evening to talk about where to from here. Louise Saunders is the Chief Executive of the Manaaki Kaimai Mamaku Trust. Passionately committed to the well-being of the Kaimai Mamaku forest and catchments, Louise joined the Trust last year after 25 years as a consulting ecologist. Her background is in restoration ecology, project management, community engagement, and collaboration are all essential for her new role as the founding CEO. She sees her current role as an opportunity to make a significant difference to conservation and communities, bringing people together to restore the Māori of our unique and diverse landscape. She grew up under the ranges at Manawaru on the Waiho River, and now watches sunset over the same pai maunga that she grew up watching the sunrise over. Over to you, Louise.
Can you see that? Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Awesome. Tēnā koutou katoa. I have the privilege of being the final speaker for this evening, and I know, looking at the time, that you've all seen and heard and felt the passion of our speakers for this kaupapa. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight and for hearing their kōrero. To round out our evening together, I'd like to start at the beginning. The sun rises and sets, sun rises over or sets behind the Kaimai Mamaku forest and ranges. This constant and reassuring backdrop is a taonga, a treasured place. This quote expresses the view of the forum, the trust, and myself about how special our paemonga, our ranges are. My journey to the role I have today began under the Kaimai Mamaku. Ko te aroha tu monga, te araha is the mountain. Ko waiho te awa, waiho is the river. Ko Manawaru a taku kāinga tipu. Manawaru was the village I was raised in. I tupuaki o ki Waikato, I used to live in the Waikato. I nohoanga o ki Waiariki, now I live in the Bay of Plenty. Ko Louise Saunders toku whenua. The photos, oopsie, I've gone too fast. The photos along the bottom of the screen are from my childhood under the Kaimais and the view I have of the ranges today. And I've lived near these ranges most of my life. It's a place that I care for very deeply. I want to thank all our presenters for contributing their time, expertise and perspectives tonight. And my thanks to our audience, many of whom have been on the Kaimai Mamaku Forum journey since its inception. It's taken a long time, more than a decade, to get to today. And it's important to know that the hard work of all those who helped develop the mission and the vision has not been set aside. Those of you who participated in meetings and working groups and steering groups should be gratified to know that the Trust has kept close at heart all your hard work. The mission and vision are unchanged. And of the 10 objectives that the Forum identified, the Trust has chosen 3 for action from 2022 to 2024. The Forum set the foundation for the establishment of the Trust and for our direction moving forward. The vision of iwi and hapu and Te Papa Atawhai for the Kaimai Mamaku Restoration Project has given us the platform for meaningful landscape scale action. Jobs for Nature has now given us the means to kickstart a new wave of restoration mahi, building on the hard work of volunteers, staff and contractors already hard at work in Manaaki. I was appointed as the Trust CEO in late September last year, and in the 5 months since then, a rollercoaster ride, our focus has necessarily been inward, setting up the organisational infrastructure needed to deliver the vision and the mission. We've developed strategy, policies and processes, recruited a team, launched communication channels, and re-engaged with forum members and stakeholders. We've contributed to the Joint Agency Committee of Regional Councils in Te Papatawai and the Transitional Governance Group reviewing project proposals. Next month, we'll take over administration of the Jobs for Nature Kaimai Mamaku Restoration Project, which is a significant milestone for the Forum and the Trust. We'll be entrusted with the management of 3 operational projects carrying out restoration mahi on more than 9,000 hectares of forest, 2 projects commencing work on a further 1,200 hectares, 5 more projects in development, and a monitoring project, and that's just the start. Of the 240,000 hectares of our project area, about 22% is under some form of pest control, but the percentage under intensive pest control is much smaller, but that's growing quickly, and you all have an opportunity to be part of this groundswell of new projects. The Trust's team will be working hard to support existing projects, activate new projects, and drive collaboration. And we've heard so much about collaboration already tonight. The Forum relaunch today is the start of the Trust focusing outward again. We'll coordinate data collection and analysis, encourage citizen science and Mātauranga. We'll support you with education and the resources that you need to be effective. And we'll facilitate collaboration between projects, community and care groups, iwi and hapu, and landowners. Collaboration in the growing Kaimai Mamaku restoration whānau is already bearing fruit. Examples include seedlings of swamp Māori, Māori Tauaki, shared between a Jobs for Nature project and a stream care group as a result of a Trust newsletter article about Ngāti Tumutumu's discovery of their Māori Tauaki that you heard about from Jill tonight in Te Araha. The Kaimai Kaponga restoration team helping their neighbouring volunteer group set up trap lines in new areas of forest to protect the Kōkako population at Mokaihaha. And now the Kaimai Mamaku Forum steps back up to the plate. The Trust has an organisation, a team and funding, and we need the Forum to lead us in identifying the where and the who. Where could the next project happen? Who can action it? Who will they work with? Where can collaboration happen? And as you've seen from Scott's presentation, our GIS database is the repository for all that project activity and multiple sources of data. That database is online and accessible to everyone and will be continuously refined and updated. It'll show what's being achieved, where the action is, and where action is needed. And crucially, you'll be able to see where the gaps are and where you can get involved. Using that information, the Forum will be able to leverage the power of its network to provide leadership, taking the Kaimai Mamaku Restoration Project to the next level. We need to maintain the areas supported by restoration activity and rapidly expand, knocking down pests over increasing areas, bringing back our birds, insects, and forest, restoring the Māori. We need to build community activity around restoration action, collecting and sharing knowledge and raising community awareness. The Forum's role will be in helping make that happen, identifying the right people and the best places to launch new projects, extend existing ones, and adding new layers of restoration action and data. The Forum can leverage the immense power of its collective networks to build the breadth and depth of the project. No project, group, or landowner should feel isolated. We need to work together. And we have reason to be optimistic. If we had to choose a time for this project and others like it to really take flight, it's now. Our people and communities are reassessing what's important to them. They want to know how they can help to reverse the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis. They want to reconnect with Te Taio, the environment. They want to be part of and do something positive and life-affirming. Business people want to do the right thing. and not just greenwashing. They want to know what authentic action they can take. And people are changing careers to be part of this mahi. And that's fantastic because we're going to need more people, a lot more people. As Pa pointed out in his opening comments, the Kaimai Mamaku has been taken for granted, but now is the time for 500,000 people to recognise the taonga they have on their doorstep. And the forum can lead us in engaging with every interested person and turning their interest into action. So, where to from here? Today, we're restarting that conversation. Whether you're part of the forum and part of the community, take action today. Reach out, make contact, join up, and lead others towards our mission. From now on, you'll see an increasing flow of information showing what action's being taken, learning opportunities and resources available, connecting you with others, bringing people together, reporting on results and progress, identifying challenges, and celebrating success. From our speakers tonight, you've heard about the activity that's already happening across all facets of the Kaimai Mamaku, the knowledge being shared, and the opportunities to get involved. Don't forget about that Kiwi survey. Our goal is to help restoration action be coordinated and aligned and effective across the Kaimai Mamaku landscape. And our vision is for the entire Kaimai Mamaku to be covered with restoration activity, with each activity contributing to a fundamental change in the trajectory of the Kaimai Mamaku. These images of lush forest on lofty peaks are deceptive. There's an urgent need to turn things around from the current pathway of forest decline. We're going to focus on increasing that restoration momentum to improve forest health, and the need is urgent. The challenge is huge. As Pa so rightly pointed out, this is a large, diverse and complex landscape. When finding the best response to the restoration challenge, we know that one size doesn't fit all here. We need every tool in our arsenal. We need all of the tools we have available, Western science and Mātauranga. The pests are smart. They breed fast, they move fast, and they don't always do what we expect. And I don't just mean the pest animals. So we need to be adaptable, persistent, and innovative, and we need to share knowledge to make sure that we have the latest intel on what works best. With shared knowledge and collective action, we can achieve the vision of a thriving Kaimai Mamaku. He waka eka noa. We're all in this together. Thank you all for being here tonight. Ka kite anō.
Thank you for that, Louise. And what a bright future. And I like what you said about it's going to take everything we have, and I'll add to that, it's going to take everyone that we can muster basically as well. So with that in mind, I think a common theme throughout this is to encourage everyone to join up, to work collaboratively to achieve the vision that we're setting forth with this. Louise. And with that, I would like to thank all of our speakers for the night, for sharing such awesome kōrero at Mātauranga. And like I said before, ko te kaiata rangatira te kōrero, and my cup is overfull with a lot of the Mātauranga that I've soaked up tonight. Secondly, I'd like to thank all the people for viewing, both who tuned in live to watch this and those who will watch this recorded. Thank you so much. Hopefully there was some stuff in there for you, and that you can use in your endeavours to protect our ngahere. With that, I'd like to thank the kaupapa, Kaimai Mamaku, for protecting a bastion of biodiversity that is close to my home in Te Aroa, and close to a lot of other iwi, whānau, hapu communities. So thank you, everyone. With that, I'll close us with a karakia and we'll finish with a video. Koenei tātou, ko tuku ngā kōrero ki te pai tata, koenei tātou hoki, ko tuku ngā whakaaro ki te pai tapiti, whakairihe nei kōrero e nei wānanga ki te ngāka o tēnā, tūturu whakamaua kia tīna. Haumie huie tai ki e. Thank you so much, everyone.